Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges as he explores turning the page on his life and yours. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, Paul. I have an important announcement to make today. This week, we are beginning a 2-month break on the podcast and blog for the next chapter with Charlie. We will be mostly silent for the next 2 months, December 23 and January 24. We will begin again approximately the second week of February. You know, the time has come to reconsider our purpose and our goals. For more than 9 years of blogs and 6 years of podcasts, our primary focus has been on a search for meaning, adventure, and awe. I am pleased with the work that we have done, more than 300 podcasts and over 450 blogs. However, as we approach a full decade of service, I feel that we have grown significantly, and I have learned even more about what I call the purpose of life and the role of the fingerprint of God in all that we do. We are living in a culture of confusion. Something is missing, and most of us are not even sure what that is. It's time to talk about it. I intend to devote the next 2 months to creating a strategy for discussing how we might awaken within each of us a more loving world. So today, I have asked my dear friend Wendy Hooper Ross to partner with me in discussion as she interviews me regarding my mission in life and with the next chapter with Charlie. With that, let's let the show begin. Wendy Hooper Ross, thank you for agreeing to interview me and discussing with me the driving forces behind what I call a minor yet significant course change in the purpose of the next chapter with Charlie. I really look forward to addressing the whys and the hows of what we might be doing in February 24. What do you think of that, Wendy?
I am just so touched that you asked me to have this conversation with you, because I know this is pivotal, but I'm really curious about it. I mean, what is going on with your life that has caused you to refresh your successful and insightful program that you've done for nearly a decade?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. Just to let the audience know, silence is bad on radio, and you're going to get a bit of silence as I ponder before I ponder my questions, because that was such a good question. I have been influenced by a loss in our culture of meaning and purpose and some sort of intent. We have a culture that doesn't quite know what it wants to do. You know, I believe people are hungry. I believe we live in a hungry society, but most of us don't really know what is missing, what we're hungry for. And so we're not exactly sure on that. So what ends up happening, what I've seen, we try to discover these missing parts through sort of tactical things like careers and relationships, or we either numb our incomplete selves, often with unhealthy choices like alcohol and drugs, or like my mantra in the 60s, sex and drugs and rock and roll. I mean, that's why we lived. And before the next question, I do want to say, I don't intend to discount the value of career or toxic relationships, of getting out of toxic relationships.
Okay, you had me for a moment there.
Yeah, I don't devalue that. I think that's extremely important. But there is even an underlying driving force behind those.
One would hope.
Yeah, I think we've traded what was intended. I will talk a lot about divine intent. And divine intent is very relational. What God created is a very relational. It's relational with the divine, and it's relational with other people, and we're relational with what we do.
Okay.
But what we have done is we've individualized that so much that it's all just about me and what am I getting? You know, I call it power, prestige, and possessions. You know, how do I fill those? And we're missing. Those are empty. There needs to be something else.
Well, Yes. And I feel for a moment, forgive me for saying this, you kind of like summed up Orange County for me. Just saying.
Our bubble.
Well, we're a little superficial at times, and it gets... Okay, I wish you all could see his face. It's priceless right now. But we get a little focused on keeping up with the Joneses. They got a Bentley, I have to have a Bentley. They have a newer Bentley, I have to have a newer Bentley. You know, he's got a Barbie doll wife, well, I got to get a Barbie doll wife. Whatever. It's unfortunate that it is so narrow and singular.
And we learn that, and you know, we see that, we envy that. It's our envy. I think it comes from that. This will probably, I live in the world of offending people.
I live right there with you.
Yeah, it comes in the world of insecurity. That I am missing something, and I am not valued by other people, and I don't, and when I'm not valued by other people, then I don't value myself. So I do all of these external things like keeping up with the Joneses, just to make me feel valuable, and then I get them, and it doesn't work.
Exactly. I want to bring you back to something you said a moment ago, because you touched me. You said, we're getting this way because we're seeing this and we're learning it from what we're seeing around us. And what I hear you implying is that we're not teaching a better way.
There's a brilliant book called The School of Life by, I can't think of his name right now. It's by a really famous author. Paul's looking him up right now, and we'll get it. But he talks about in schools how we're taught reading, writing, arithmetic, getting ahead in life, but we don't talk about emotions, about meaning, about purpose, about value, none of those things.
Not even civility anymore.
Oh, what a word. I love that word, and it just doesn't exist. As a matter of fact, its antonym is more popular, of being non-civil, of being in your face and being aggressive. That is, that's become the American way. And, look, we have a presidential candidate that lives on that.
Yeah, the divisiveness is beyond distressing. It ties in so completely with what you're saying. I mean, because we're divided. We're divided from one another. We're no longer a community. We no longer understand or value community. We're not civil to one another. The respect isn't there. And it's tragically, I think, translating into unhappiness for all of us.
I think one of the greatest means that keep us from community is all of our electronic toys. I had an eye doctor appointment, and people that have trouble with their eyes typically are either babies or old people. I mean, I'm 74 and I'm the young guy in there.
And I'm looking at you with my glasses on, so whatever.
Yeah, but it's old people. So you think old people are not, they're not into phones and all that sort of thing. They're not tech savvy. Bullshit.
Right.
I was sitting in a room of 7 people. Everybody except me was on their phone, not talking, pressing something, reading something. And so it becomes all individual. It all becomes what I am doing. There is no sense of inner space that we're going to talk a lot about, because I think of spaciousness, the spaciousness of solitude, that it brings so much to us, or else just sitting and waiting. We've got to be entertaining. Look at the airports, TVs in the airports. You stand in line in a bank and there's some TV thing going on, some music, because we can't stand ourselves. Blaise Pascal says the bane of human beings is the inability to sit alone by themselves. And Blaise wrote that in, 1500s.
That is so sad and so accurate. It really is. All right, so now that we've, named several things that are perhaps not moving in the right direction, what do you make of it? Where do we go?
Well, I'm going to throw a Bible verse at everybody, but don't worry, everybody, because it's a bastardized version of a Bible verse, because it's my version of the Bible verse. But it comes from the prophet Amos, and, so 600 BC or something like that. And I think he's writing of this day today because it fits us so much. And he says, in that day, people will be so hungry for the word of the Lord that they don't know what they're hungry for. And they are scattering looking for that something. And I feel the church has failed, and I feel religion has failed at showing people the beauty of divinity, the beauty of the Godhead, and the beauty of what God has to offer, and how that impacts our lives and changes our lives. I'm not talking about people becoming holy rollers, about going to church 3 days a week. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what I practice now. Is since 2020, I have followed the late medieval Christian mystics. And so that would include people like that are familiar to some people, St. Francis of Assisi, Bonaventure, Teresa of Avila, John of the Cross, Julian of Norwich, Meister Eckhart. They got it. And this was like 1200 to 1500 AD. And they got it, and it was not about performance. It was about intimacy. It was all about union with the divine. And I think if I can do anything, if I can show through our practical, or I can suggest through our everyday activities, who we live as people, if I can show that is related to the intimacy of God and the nature of God as we're created in God's image, I have fulfilled my mission.
Not only does that seem incredibly timely, I personally, knowing you, feel like you're the right person to embark on sharing that message. And I say that because I have, as you and I know, we've spoken, I've gone to parochial schools, and I've been involved through various churches, through my family members and whatnot. And I wouldn't follow them and listen to them and want to learn from any of them the way I would you. I think that your notion that we're starving and we're hungry for something is so spot on. And we're all learning to varying degrees how to, get the partner, get the job, do the career. And we're still empty.
Yeah, we're fulfilled to an extent. There is a fulfillment of being married to the right person. Now, let's take that married to the right person is a very divine intent, because that is the sharing of love, the sharing of troubles, of joys, of all sorts of things. That is very communal. See, I think we're created as communal people.
Absolutely.
I'm an introvert. I love being alone, but if I'm not in a community at the same time, I'm empty.
Yeah.
It's just me with my thoughts writing on my computer, and isn't that cool? But it's not really gratifying. It doesn't really hit this meaning and purpose and with this divine intent. And I had no intention of saying this on the show, but let's give it a shot. If we were to explain theology, they call it the ontology of God, which means the essence, the nature of God, what God really is. And St. Bonaventure in 1270 or so wrote about the Trinity, and he wrote that the Trinity, that God, before God is anything, God is good. God is goodness. That is the ultimate ontology nature of God. Now, how does God express goodness? Goodness is expressed through love. Goodness is the noun, love is the verb. And let me do in 3 minutes an hour lecture. If you would imagine, let's just go to our fantasy minds for a minute. Let's break away from left brain thinking and go into right brain thinking. And instead of age of reason, post-enlightenment thinking of logic and rationale, this is very logical. It's not illogical, but you can't prove it. This is nothing proved. So Bonaventure suggested this, that the Father was the fount of love, that the Father is love, and the Father empties himself, and I'm going to use the male is used in that, but you could easily use a female. I don't care. It's not genderless. It's genderful. It's full of both genders.
Okay.
So you can't say gender. The divine is genderless. The divine is genderful. So the Father is the fount of love. It's like a river coming into the Father of love that never stops. But the Father continually empties himself of that love, giving it away. So as he gives it away, more is coming in. But goodness is not good unless it is given. Goodness cannot be, there is no such thing as good that is not given. The same as love. Love is not love unless it is given. You know, you can love an object, but that's very different than me loving you as a friend. I must give you love, and I must receive love. That completes a relationship. So the Father, in the formation of the second person of the Trinity, the Son, is a giving of love, an emanation of love. It gives love, and that love takes on all the characteristics of the Father. That's why the Scripture will say the Father and the Son are one. And now what happens, now think about this. Love is so cool. Let's just take you and me, you know, and so we have this good relationship, and so we love each other, we care about each other, but in our love, a third entity is formed. And that third entity, if you picture it, it just sort of separates itself, and that is the loving relationship. There is our relationship, there is our love, but out of that forms this third entity, which is love. Like, you know, when I die, I'm older than you, so I'm going to, significantly older than you. So when I better die first. That I may disappear, but that third party never disappears. That third entity never disappears.
That is a great explanation.
That love never disappears. And you know what that love becomes? The third member of the Trinity becomes the Holy Spirit. And so now that is an essence of love. And so the three do a divine dance of love. And it is to give love. And then to wrap up this theological discussion, the Trinity must give love. Therefore, what we have is creation. And creation is a place where the Trinity can express and receive love. And that's who we are. And we are created to love each other, but to love the divine. And that is what the divine is hoping for. The divine cares much less about who you're screwing than are you loving God. Now I know I just offended half the world right there. but that's what I want to get at.
Okay.
What I want to get at is to show us that we're all about this love, and this overwhelms everything we do.
So it sounds to me like, because you're, like you said, you're tweaking a little bit the direction of the next chapter, and it got both bigger and narrower at the same time, because love is vast, but choosing to give love and be aware of that is much narrower, and those conversations are going to be interesting.
I love that. I think that's a brilliant observation when you
I love that you use all my names.
Well, they just sound so cool together. Yeah, you know, love is expressed, and this is where what we've talked about thus far. I'm thinking as a listener, saying, God, is this going to be a Bible study? You know, is this going to be where all Charlie's going to talk about is God? No. I mean, God will be involved, but it's not all about God. It's about us and our practical lives. And a meaningful life, in my mind, is one that is aligned with divine intent. And the divine intent, we are created, we are hardwired, we are DNA. This is not like a choice. This is who we are. We have to choose not to be aligned with the divine. We don't choose to be aligned with the divine. We are aligned with the divine, and we can choose not to be. That's the beauty of free will. We can accept or reject all of this. But there are some ideas that came to me, and I'm curious what you think about it. And also, you know, producer Paul listening in and shaking his head and rolling his eyes, and you know, doesn't know what to do here. But you know, there are topics that I think I would like to address that are very, very practical topics. I've not done a whole lot on them, but I think they're so meaningful. And the topics are like, let's begin with the Bible topic, the fruit of the Spirit, which I call the fruits of the Spirit, which every theologian doesn't like calling it the fruits of the Spirit. But they include elements such as love, joy, peace, kindness, goodness, and self-control. What if we talked about that and we tried to live in kindness and peace and goodness and self-control, and we can talk about those, and those are issues that self-control, we could do a podcast on self-control because none of us have it.
I think we might need to start there.
What's that?
We might want to start there.
Might want to start there, except I have so much and so little.
Oh.
That's I have great self-control, and then I'm totally out of control in other areas. And isn't that human?
Yes.
And that's what I want to talk about. And things like, the virtues. Americans are very strong into believing in virtues, not in living according to virtues, but virtues do exist. But virtues are, we are created what's called imago Dei, in the image of God. We are created in the likeness of God, and virtues are part of the nature of God. And all we are doing in our virtues are not all we are doing. What we are doing is that we are expressing an attribute of God. And
what do you mean exactly? Like the prescribed biblical virtues that are defined therein? You lost me.
Give me a virtue. Just give me one that you like.
Honesty?
Okay. God, if nothing else, is honest. Read the Bible. The Bible isn't only full of good and wonderful, nice and clean things. Bible is full of death and tragedy and wars and wiping out civilizations and God getting angry. It's all real. It's all very honest. It's not trying to hide these things. It's saying this is what life is like. And so when we are honest, if I did something to offend you and you didn't know about it, my honesty to come and confess to you, say, Wendy, I'm sorry I did X and such, you're going to be upset with me, but you're also going to appreciate that I had the chutzpah to come and tell you that. That is a reflection of the divine nature.
Yes.
Did that make sense?
Yes. And that leans into respect as well and so many other things.
Oh, yeah. They so our virtue, and so, we have issues like, things that I've come up with like goodness and philanthropy and compassion. And those are all divine virtues, and those are all what we live for. And so I want to talk about those rather than simply self-improvement. I want to do, maybe instead of self-improvement, I'm brainstorming here because I'm not exactly sure where the show is going to go, except I know it's going to go different. But what was I talking about?
The virtues.
Which one?
Well, at first I mentioned honesty.
Yeah.
And then you were talking about the other things like generosity and kindness and...
When I demonstrate compassion, for instance, I am totally aligned with the divine. And what if we did a show on compassion and we never mentioned God?
Yeah.
We never mentioned, it doesn't matter. We're in alignment with the divine intent. That's what I want the show to be about. I want the show to be practical, that we're talking about practical elements that achieve love and goodness and raise up the level of our consciousness and our behaviors in a world that is so broken.
I think I'm tracking you. I have one question. And I really wish you had met my late husband, Mick. I knew him for years before I knew what a good man he was, because he didn't boast about it. He didn't talk about it. He didn't say, I did A, B, and C. He would just go quietly do it. So are you talking about having a show where you actually have conversations and help people understand what it is to really live it rather than broadcast, I'm doing this? Because it feels like there's a disconnect between those two.
Yeah, see, well, the disconnect, we will talk about contemplation and solitude and silence, and those are very important. Religious, personal, because you don't have to be religious to be into contemplation, solitude, and silence, but they're strong disciplines in the religious community. And the ego and the true self really come into play. What am I doing? The square peg in a round hole. What am I doing to fill that? And if I am living virtuously. I am filling a round hole with a round hole with a round peg.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter where it comes from. It just matters that I do it. Let me read this thing that I wrote, and I think it's time we take a break. What do you think, Paul? Should I read this thing now or after the break? Read this thing. I'm following instructions. And I was thinking about what the next chapter might look like, and I wrote this. What if the next chapter was about filling your own purpose with social and personal acts of kindness? What if we focus less on personal structures for living a better life and more about living a life with eternal ramifications? You know, the better life is always, is my car, is my this, is my that, is my family. And then what if this is a big word, I want to have a show on legacy. What if legacy, Wendy, is not about you? What if Wendy's legacy is not about Wendy, is not about, what was your husband's name?
Mick.
It was not, Nick, with Mick, his legacy was not about him. His legacy was about the impact that he left.
Right.
That's all he cared. You know, and that's what kindness is huge in my vocabulary. What if nobody ever remembers me, which it's not what if, they won't. After one generation, I'll just be on some family tree, a name. They're not going to remember Charlie.
Right.
But what if everybody, or what if a large percentage of these people that are part of my legacy are kind? Then my legacy is going on for generations, if not centuries.
Yes.
And with Mick, his legacy continues.
Yes.
No one may associate his name to it. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
And when my name is associated to it, it's filling my ego. Let's take a break, and then I want to talk about ego. Hi there, you're listening to Charlie Hedges with my dear friend Wendy Hooper Ross, who is interviewing me on what the next chapter for the next chapter might be starting February 2024. And we were talking about legacy, and Wendy's husband, who has since died, was not interested in promoting himself, but was interested in, if I catch this right, in promoting a legacy of goodness, a legacy of impact. And when we, as humans, promote a legacy of ourself, what we are doing is we're filling the small self. We're filling the ego, which is all about me. And I think I told you one time when we were having breakfast, I told you about a book title that a friend of mine wanted to mention, and I said, "Are you going to write it?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Can I have the title?" And he said, "Of course." And I never wrote anything. But Vance Caesar, no, I don't think I'll write on this one. It'll be a chapter. It won't be a book. But he called it The High Value of Low Self-Esteem. It's a great concept.
It really is.
Yeah,
you had to explain it to me, though, so you might have to explain it to the listeners.
Oh, yeah, I didn't
get it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to explain that, because the high value of low self-esteem is he's talking about very successful people. Many, not all, certainly never, not all, but many successful people have very low egos. And so they are filling it with stuff. They're filling it with successes, with money, with acquisitions, with more power and more prestige, but it is the square peg in the round hole. It does not fill it. So there is a high value.
Well, they created all this value.
They created all this value. They're big, popular, have money, have impacting people, but their self-esteem goes nowhere, because those things do not fill your self-esteem.
Yes.
Your self-esteem. What do you think your self-esteem is filled by? I'm curious what you would say.
You know, and it's funny, and something leapt to mind, so I'm just going to spit it out my mouth now. I was recently at an event where I was a contributor, and I'm a director on the board for this wonderful entity, and my name wasn't listed. and Bear With People got very upset. And they said, aren't you upset by this? And I said, no. It's not about my name being up there so other people can see that. That's not why I do this. I do this because I choose to do this. That's my reward. That's what fills me up. If you don't get my name on the wall, I don't really care.
Do you know how rare that is?
Yeah, there's 3 of us in this room.
Yeah. Well, it's probably rare among the 3 of us because we all like to see our name up there.
I think I'm more of an introvert than you are. I do.
No, we'd have to chat about that.
We're going to arm wrestle later.
I am socially adept, but my energy comes from being by myself.
Yes.
So,
and like you, I am really comfortable being here on the radio. I'm really comfortable being on a mic on stage and talking about things that I think are important. But the interaction with the crowd and all of it is exhausting. But you do it anyway because it's the right thing to do.
So that kind of interaction is exhausting. But let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. What about your smaller, intact community of people? That is absolutely essential, is it not?
It is.
So community doesn't have to, community can be 1, 2, 3, or 4 people, mm-hmm. or whatever that is, but we are intimately involved in their lives, working with them, working for them, mm-hmm. and doing good to the world as a group. Mm-hmm. That is what, in my mind, that is what we are created to do. That is one of the places I feel the church has failed. Now, you see, you think of the early church, mm-hmm. and the early church, talked about community and giving and sharing. And doing
of course.
Well, you know what, Wendy? They live next door.
Yeah, literally.
Literally. Yeah. You knew the baker because the baker would live 4 houses down from you, and so it was naturally. That's why the biblical community was naturally communal. Me, right now, my church is 25 minutes away.
Yeah.
What kind of community do I have in that? I show up on Sunday and I talk to the people I like. I'm starting to do more things to get involved. But I think that's where the church has failed in building that kind of community. And that's hurting. That's why so many people are leaving the church.
Well, I have to admit it. I think that was a big part of what alienated me. I saw these big churches in the 70s and 80s, these mega churches, and they were on TV, and they all had crazy hair and crazy suits. And I thought, what has this become? It's a 3-ring circus. I don't get it. I don't get. And the communion, literally. I'm not saying the body and of Christ. I'm just saying the communion of people connecting, like really communing with one another, is gone. It's gone from the church. It's gone from society.
And that's, and just as he talked about the Eucharist, that is the value of the Eucharist. The Eucharist is a communal activity. Mm-hmm. It's that we all, I'm Episcopalian, so I'm very liturgical, and that's, Episcopalian is Catholic light. And we all at one point in our liturgy is all very relational. It's all talking to each other, praying together, confessing together, doing all of these things together. But we all at one point go up to the altar rail and kneel together, mm-hmm. begging for the body and blood of Christ. Mm-hmm. It's a communal activity. It is impacting me individually, but I'm doing it. My person kneeling next to me is doing it for the same reason. Mm-hmm. So that means we are in communion with one another.
Right. Well, the very act of kneeling before anyone, the reverence, the respect, the humbling of oneself, it's a bit missing lately.
It's real. Well, who do we have to do that? I mean, there's very few people on the planet. I mean, well, in the United States, let's say. Mm-hmm. But that is the nature of the divine. And, perhaps let's talk about the divine because, yes. I think with you it's going to be a very interesting chat because you are not a church person.
No, I'm not churchy.
You're not an atheist. But you're not, I wouldn't say you probably wouldn't consider yourself a practicing Christian.
No.
Although you have many of the values.
Thank you. I believe I do. And I believe that's why you invited me here today because you were probably hoping I wouldn't embarrass you, and I probably won't.
Oh, I know you wouldn't embarrass me. There's no way.
Yeah, no, I am. I have very strong beliefs about the importance of being a good human. And I have very strong beliefs in if we know and love ourselves, then we're light years down that path of getting there and being better humans. And let me just say with something, because when you speak, these visions come in my head. And when you were talking about the communion and we're all up there together, and I said something about when do we ever get on our knees and show reverence for someone else? Because we're so proud and we're so tied up in that nonsense. But how many businessmen in their, $2,000 suits would
make it
$5,000 suits would drop to their knees to tie their child's shoe or to kiss a wound if their child fell. I mean, in an instant they would do that, and that's what I see as the divine moments. When you shed your ego, even for just a nanosecond, and you are doing something good and right for someone or the world or a dog or just something outside yourself. I feel like those are the divine moments that I enjoy.
I so concur, and it doesn't require, in my purview, because I believe we are all God's possession, no matter what religion or what we proclaim. We are created in the divine nature. We are created to love, and we are created to live eternally with God. Now, there are plenty, and there's good scripture against me. And there are lots of people that are against me, but that's who I am. That's what I believe. Mm-hmm. Let me read you something that I wrote as I was writing on, talking about this.
Yeah.
And I wrote, in our new show, as I think of it today, is more about, I can't even read my own writing here, mm-hmm. is about more than, it's about acting on, it's more than about acting on love, but on the conscious source of love and aligning that created, inspired source with us. The cool thing is that such living does not require religion per se. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be a follower of God and be religious mm-hmm. in that sort of way. You don't even, here's the thing that it's going to be radical. I don't know if it's going to attract people or turn people off, but you don't even have to necessarily believe in God. As long now, believing in God really helps because, well, sure. It's because the assistance, what God brings and what God can enlighten us with, and God's enlightening us even if we don't acknowledge God enlightening us. The work of the Holy Spirit is working in us all the time. So it's not necessary to be. I love the creeds, but it's not necessary for a relationship with God and to express godly love. It's not necessary to announce one's allegiance to a certain deity. I think the divine is the deity. To know that there is something. There is something else. Life does not make sense without a creator.
Well, and echo you, I'm going to say something that may not be very popular. And it's my opinion. We're getting
good at that.
That's why we're here. I think to deny the communal nature of human beings is folly. And I think to deny the energy that is threaded through every living thing is folly. And it's been proven. There have been studies where people yelled at plants, and then there are studies where people said the kind, loving things to plants, and the plants that were spoken well to thrived, and the ones that were yelled at did not. You cannot tell me that we are not all connected. And if that energy that is threaded through every single thing is not collective divinity, then I don't know what is.
That's really well said. You should be a preacher, Wendy.
I think you're working on me.
Before we know it, Wendy's going to declare. Wendy's going to declare her faith in. She's going to become a good Catholic.
You're not even a good Catholic, so no.
Yeah, is there such a thing? Yeah, producer Paul is raising his hand.
Okay, he's the good Catholic.
Let's sort of wrap up. We've gone around and around talking about what I want to do. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but we can say what I want to do on the show I would like to talk about divine purpose. I will talk about God. I want to talk about the beauty and the love of God, not the transactional reward and justice system of God. Because that makes God almost a non-intimate entity. If it's about reward and judgment, where is the love? Where is the beauty? Where is the I want to hang with you.
Right. Where's the honesty in it?
Oh, you're into honesty. Where is that? I want to talk about that, but I want to talk about it without sounding like I'm a preacher. I want to talk about it as this is an important part of my life that is reflected, and an important part of all of our lives that is reflected in our behaviors of love, not just our behaviors of goodness, but that the source is love, and that is what I'm feeling called to do. I am saddened by people that no longer feel connected to the divine, and I think those of us who've been in that profession have probably failed a bit. There are things that we could do better. I'm not sure what we want to do better, but I'll wrap it up with a metaphor. I'm not good at stories, Paul, but I'm good at metaphors. Paul wants me to tell stories. Is that I see what we need in Christianity is a whole new vocabulary. We can't be using vocabulary of saved and not saved. What are you saved from? Saved from hell? I mean, that's what it's all about, going to heaven. That's it? And an e-ticket to heaven? It's much greater than that. It's a definition of the entirety of our lives, that we are one with this holiness, with this divine, and with the intervention and the wonderful assistance of the Spirit of God, as I talked about the Trinity, of the Spirit of God. I want to be able to help people connect with the divine in the most practical ways possible. So many of our topics will be very similar, I think, to what they've been in the past, but with a different thread running through them all the way. And the different thread is God.
Nuance is everything. You have 2 months to figure this out.
I have 2 months to figure it out, and so I'm going to ask for the prayers of all of our listeners. Wendy Hooper Ross, I love you.
I love you too, Charlie.
You're so cool. And I really want to thank, after almost a decade, my heartfelt thanks to all of our devoted listeners and who have hung in with us and enjoyed our productions, our podcasts and our blogs. You are the reason we do this. This is not an ego deal. I don't make any money on this. It's just to serve you. That is going to continue to be the goal of this show. And so, until February 2024, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. All the best. And please know that our prayers are with you in your time of the grand hunt for meaning. See you in a couple of months.